Okay, so the second type of problem to do with the basic identities is something called verifying, and these are actually easier than simplifying. The idea here is that you are given an equation and your goal is to make the right side look like the left or vice versa. Okay, so your goal is just to make one side of the equation equal the other. Side. So you can choose whichever side that you want to start with. I usually choose the most complicated side first. That's just my 2 cents. Because if you choose the easier side, it's going to be really hard to turn a 1 into all that mess. So I would choose the left side, and I would just, you kind of do it, not kind of, you exactly do it like I did on the Simplify videos. You use algebra and plugging in identities to see if you can make this into a 1. So it's kind of cool because you just simplify this and hopefully you'll get to a 1. So what would be my first step? Well, I mentioned in my last video that any time I see the number 1 and somebody squared, I try to use one of the Pythagorean identities. And if you look down that list, there's one of those that matches what I see exactly, right? I have a 1 minus tangent squared in the denominator, and I have a 1, I'm sorry, that's a plus, and I have a 1 plus tangent squared right here. And what does this identity say that this is equal to? Well, it's equal to secant squared. So right off the bat, when I go to recopy, I'm going to just recopy the numerator, secant squared, and on the bottom, I'm going to plug in this identity, which is a secant squared. So if I had to make notes, sometimes teachers like to see like what are you doing from one step to the next, then I would put I just did a Pythagorean identity. And then you're pretty much done, guys, because anytime you have something over itself, well, it cancels out and it just equals 1. So simplify, and you've got that 1 equals the 1 that's up here. So we definitely solved our problem. There's other ways to get to the answer. This is probably the most basic. All right, let's do another. Okay, so for this one, both the left and the right side look equally gross, I guess you could say. But for me, it's always easier to start with an addition problem because I know I can do algebra to addition. Now, I can't add these together as is, so what I would do is go ahead and work on plugging something in for those. And my go-to, I'm just going to let you know, I rarely use the ones up here, guys. My go-to is usually these when I'm dealing with cotangent and tangent. So my first step, that's what I would do. I would say, well, cotangent's actually cosine over sine, plus, okay, tangent is actually sine over cosine. And what I have done here, and remember, you leave this side alone, you're just trying to end up there. My first step is I would just write out that I used my quotient identities. Okay. Now, my next step is, what do you do with two fractions to get them together? Well, you need to get a common denominator. So that's what I'm going to work on. And the common denominator in this case, one of them's sine and one of them's cosine, so you've got to multiply them together. So the common denominator looks like sine cosine. Okay, so let's go and remember with fractions, whenever we multiply the denominator by something, we have to do the same to the top. So what did I multiply sine by to get this? Well, I multiplied it by cosine, which means I need to multiply the top by cosine. So what's cosine times cosine? Cosine squared. I'll recopy my plus. Same thing here. What did I multiply this cosine by to turn it into that? Well, I multiplied it by a sine. So I need to multiply the top also by sine, and that's what you're looking at. Okay, this looks nothing like what's on the right, and it may throw you and you may feel like you're stuck. Anytime you do some algebra and then you feel stuck, look over here again and see if you can use an identity. I will give you a hint. There is something that is identical to this in this area right here. Well, it's right here, guys. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. That's exactly what we have here. They've just been flip-flopped. So I'm just going to replace everything here with a 1, and I'm going to recopy the denominator. And what did I do from here to here? Well, I used a Pythagorean identity. So now we are almost done, and I know that you're thinking, well, what we have doesn't look like what's on the right, but guess what? What we have is exactly what is on the right. And the reason for that is because when you have a fraction and everything's multiplied, you can actually view this as 1 over sine times 1 over cosine. And what is 1 over sine? Well, look up here. 1 over sine is cosecant. What is 1 over cosine? Look up here. It is secant. So here I was just splitting up my fraction, or you could call it simplifying, whatever you want to do. And then in this step, I just used my reciprocal identities. Reciprocal IDs. And I got to my answer. Yay! Finished. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Let me know if you come across something evil that you would like help with.